Hey everyone, it's Christina from Our Wood Home. Today I'm going to be doing some big batch freezer cooking, so I thought I'd take you along and show you some of the things that I'm making and how I assemble it. I don't think it's going to take me very long. What I try to do is use all 4 burners on the stove at once for prep, and then make meals that are similar or use similar ingredients. So for example, I'm going to be making a lot of dishes using ground beef because I bought a package of that, and if I cook it all at once then I can make several meals today. I'm going to be making some pasta dishes, so I'll be cooking a big batch of pasta and just some other things as well. So let's go get started with that. One of the dishes I'm making uses white beans, so I cooked a big batch of those earlier today because it does take forever for them to cook. I used to use my slow cooker and it was so much faster, but I haven't had that for a few years now. So instead of relying on my slow cooker to cook overnight, I'll just put these on the stovetop in the morning and let them boil and slow cook, I guess, over the course of a few hours. As I said before, I try to cook foods or meals, I guess, that are using similar ingredients because it's just most time efficient when I'm doing this style of big batch cooking for the freezer. I should probably explain what I mean by freezer cooking. I'm just making a lot of meals in advance that I can put in the freezer. They're going to be fully cooked, so when we need a quick meal, we can just take one out from the freezer and pop it in the oven to reheat. So I'm making a dish that my husband's family calls Texican Mexican, and it's a casserole with beef and beans, and it does, I think, use tomato. I can't remember without looking at the recipe because I've only made it a couple times, but I think it uses tomato. So I'm planning a few other recipes that also use tomato so that I can make a big batch of sauce and use it all today. I'm going to be using these metal baking dishes for the freezer. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be one-time use, but I just wash them out and reuse them and there's no problems there. So I already had some old ones. I think I've got 5 to reuse, and then I bought a whole bunch of new ones. These are kind of an odd size, but they're good just for like a single serving or maybe 2 servings, depending on what it is. And I thought I might make some desserts in these square pans. One of the dishes I'm making is meatloaf. It usually calls for 2 pounds of ground beef, but I'm going to do 1.5 pounds and then add some cooked beans into this just to stretch it out a bit. The recipe I follow is an actual recipe in terms of seasoning and that kind of thing, but I don't always follow it. I'm not today. This time I'm adding some different seasonings. I'm using black pepper, turmeric, some cumin, this Clubhouse brand steak spice, which I'm just trying to use up, and then this, you can't really see it. It's a Croatian seasoning mix called Vegeta, and it's a mix of dried minced vegetables with salt. So I'm putting all of that in here, and I've got some tomatoes, or tomato sauce simmering away. So when that's done, I'll be adding that into the beef mixture. And I'll also add an egg just to keep it nice and together. And then I'll be baking it. When you handle raw meat, do you use your bare hands or do you use gloves? I always use gloves. I will not touch raw meat with my bare hands. If possible, I will use a fork and knife to cut it into pieces or to just keep it in place, but I never, ever touch it with my bare hands. I've never liked doing it. It just really grosses me out. Even if I were to wash my hands right away, still really gross. So when I'm doing something like making this meatloaf down there, I used to just try using a spoon to mix it in, but it's never as thorough as if I were to mix with my hands. So to remedy that, I just wear disposable gloves and mix it up, and then I just throw the gloves away. So let me know in the comments what you do. Do you use gloves or do you just stick your bare hands in there? I have to cut an onion for the recipes, and like with the beef or all meat, I hate touching onions with my bare hands because the smell never leaves, and I will probably end up touching my eyes, and I don't want to get onion juice in my eyes. So what I do is put on my dishwashing gloves. They're not disposable, but that's okay because I can get the smell off pretty easily. And then I'll just try to peel off as much of the skin as I can using my hands, but sometimes I find it easier just to start cutting the onion, and then the skin peels off a lot easier. I know there's different hacks for making sure your eyes don't water while you're cutting onions. I don't think any of those would work for me, to be honest. I've got really sensitive eyes and I can't handle cutting a lot of onions without my eyes watering. This onion is one that I grew, so it's from my garden, and I've noticed that these little homegrown onions are so potent compared to the store-bought onions. I don't know why that is, but they have a much stronger flavor. It's not a bad flavor, it's just a lot different compared to store-bought onions. I'm also using a wooden cutting board for these onions. We only use wooden cutting boards in our kitchen. It's just a personal preference. I don't like the idea of cutting on plastic and leaving groove marks where bacteria could potentially grow, but wood is naturally antimicrobial. And of course, I still wash my wooden cutting boards. And to prevent the onion taste from getting into things that I don't want to taste like onions, such as fruit or bread, I have a dedicated onion chopping board. We use this one for onion and garlic, and David will also use it to cut the brick cheese or bread if he wants to, but he knows that anything he cuts on this board could potentially taste like onions, so that's a risk he takes. But I won't use this cutting board to cut anything besides onion and garlic for myself. I try to cut the onion in general as fine as I can because I don't like chunks of onion. I like the taste of onion, just not the texture. And I would prefer to cut these a lot smaller than I'm doing right now, but I can feel my eyes are already starting to water, so I'm just going to call this a day and get these in the pan. I wish you guys could smell the beef and onions cooking. It smells so good. I can't tell you exactly what goes into this recipe. It's the Texican-Mexican dish that my husband's mother used to make. It's a close guarded family secret. Not really, I just don't want to share it because it's a private family recipe. But you can kind of see what's going into it. It's beef and onion being cooked together. And then later I will add some cooked beans, some uncooked rice, and other seasonings and make it like a layered casserole. And then I put that in a casserole dish and sprinkle some cheese on top, and there you go. It's pretty simple, and you can definitely make something like that on your own. I ended up having to change my shirt because it was getting way too hot in here with the stove going. But I'm finished everything. I'll show you what I made, and it took me about 2 hours, maybe more like an hour and a half, because partway through I went outside and did some weeding, and I've been doing dishes as I go, so in total maybe 2 hours, I don't know. I wasn't really keeping track. I got a lot made. Some of it is fully cooked, some of it is partly cooked, and I'll explain why when I'm going through and showing you what I made. Here is everything that I made. Well, almost everything. I made some pancakes for now, and also some for later. I'll start with this, which is the meatloaf. This is partly cooked because if I were to leave it fully cooked in the freezer, I'm afraid it would dry out during the reheating. And likewise, if it was not cooked at all, I think it might take a really long time to be cooked fully while it's in the oven. I don't know. Whenever I make meatloaf, I freeze it, I cook it first, and it does end up kind of dry, so we'll see how this is when we go to cook it eventually. This one is just some pasta with tomato sauce, some ground beef, and green peppers. I cooked everything, but I didn't fully cook the noodles because I don't want them to be soggy when we reheat it. These two are the Texican-Mexican casserole that I was talking about. One has cheese because David likes cheese on his and I don't like cheese on mine. They're the exact same apart from that. And these are fully cooked because everything gets cooked together in a pot since it does have rice in it and we need that rice to be fully cooked. And I'm not sure if it would cook if I were to just put it all in the pan uncooked and then freeze it. I don't know if it would cook during the reheating process. Over here is a casserole made with salmon, pasta, and cheese. Again, I didn't cook the pasta all the way because it does tend to dry out. These three are the same. It's basically a stir fry. It's not fully cooked. I just cooked the potatoes a bit so they wouldn't turn black in the fridge, or the freezer, I mean. And each container is a combination of potato, corn, celery, red bell pepper, and some smoked turkey. David got this turkey a little while ago, and I thought it would taste really good in here. We usually make meals like this on the stove in the summer, but it does take a little bit of time and the prep takes, I think, the most time. So I'm curious to see if just thawing this ends up taking the same amount of time as it would to cook it from fresh. But either way, it's a nice meal to have in the freezer. Then I did pancakes, kind of last minute. I thought I would make some of those because I have frozen them before and they thaw quite well. I did 3 different sized pans and the pancakes are pretty tiny. I don't make giant pancakes. So I've got these 2 small pans and then a large pan. And I didn't want them to dry out, so when I was layering them, I put little dots of butter in between each layer. And then when we reheat them, we'll just keep the foil lid on so it doesn't dry out, and it should be fine to eat. That is everything that I cooked to put in the freezer for meals later. I've done this a few times and it's definitely helpful to have some quick meals that don't require any prep. They do require the time it takes to thaw them in the oven, but that's pretty easy because I can just toss it in and go about doing other things instead of waiting around in the kitchen to prepare and cook everything. This took me about 2 hours, I think, and that may seem like a long time, but it wasn't bad at all. I was able to get a lot done at once, and I was cleaning as I was going while things were cooking on the stove, so that helped as well. Let me know if you do freezer cooking like this, and if it's something you do all the time or just occasionally. I don't do it every week, because these meals are not to eat right away, but I try to do it once a month or so and replenish our freezer meals as we eat them up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it interesting or informative. If you like what you see, I hope that you consider subscribing, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.